the what, why, and who of data requests. So the types of data assets or deliverables, what types of data assets and deliverables are the possible sources for data requests? So what types of things can people be requesting around? So again, I mentioned we're going to focus on report processes, but maybe they're looking for informational deliverables about using reporting tools, queries, or scripts, dashboards or aggregate report projects, data views, or maybe data flow processes. They're looking for information on an ETL or data integration or surveys. Maybe they're just looking at information around the data tools. Like I've got a reporting tool and I want to know how do I get access to it, or request to get access to it. Or maybe data systems, data sets, data models also might be looking for, I need information around this, or how do I get access to it, or what's the policies around it. Reference data list as well. What's the list we have here? How does that map? Or business glossary definitions requests around that. So these are the types of things that you might be doing requests on. Again, we're going to focus on the report and data flow for the purpose of today's presentation, focusing mainly just on the report flavor of those data processes. So what types of data requests are there then associated with that, or kind of across the board? So maybe it's someone requesting help to search to see if something exists. Is there a report to help me find out, what customers were at risk of not renewing our product next year, right? That might be a question that someone's asking. Is there a report to do that? Have we ever run reports on that? Do we have any metrics on that? If you can't find it, maybe then they would request a new process, right? Okay, I would like a new report to help me with this, okay? Maybe you found a report that does something what you want to do and you want to request a change to that process. Or maybe you saw a report that looks right to you, or that looks like it might be what you want, but you're not really sure, but there's no documentation on it other than the fact that it exists. And you're asking someone to explain, well, how is this thing, I see that there's a thing on there called retention score. How is that calculated? What does that mean? Where does it come from? And so you might request that someone goes through and in this case, what we're talking about is adding glossary definitions and clarification to that report so you can understand what that means. Maybe there's a report that's staying out there for a while and you're like, is this still valid? Is this still being used? You can get a review of that. Maybe you're asking to have access to be able to run it. You see something in a menu, but you can't get there. Maybe you're having access to a data system or tool so you can do your own self-service reporting. Maybe you're, wanted to say, hey, I need permission to take this report and share that, sort of a policy-related ask. Or maybe you need to ask someone to run this to get a new version of it for you. Or maybe you see some data quality problem in a report and you want to request it. So those are types of, types of requests that you could have. Now, we'll come back to why it's important to understand this variety of requests. So as you're sort of putting points of engagement for your data consumers to initiate data requests, you might have different points of entry or different workflows or process or routing for these different types of requests, or different priority. Like we're going to focus just on the first couple or something in the process. Right now, also think about who are making your requests. So you might have internal requesters that are coming from your business offices that are, just looking to see existing reports that they can run. They don't have any necessarily technical abilities to build their own. Or maybe it's senior leadership that's looking for particular types of dashboards and reports, or other employees within your organization. Or maybe it's your customers that are using your product that you've got out there. Or you've got internal projects where your IT team or your BI team is looking for information or requesting things. Or you yourself are trying to say, like, hey, I am requesting, I'm going to build a new report, but I want to process a request to document that as well. I have to let my dog out here. Sorry for that. Then you might have external requesters coming from outside. So I think for the purpose of this discussion, we're not going to get too much in the weeds about external requesters, but we'll focus mainly on how you handle internal requests from sort of functional or technical users, or how you might track your own requests in a way that's useful. So when a request comes in, let's say for a new report or a question about a report, where does it then go to? So it might get routed to a data steward. So for either a functional or technical steward, or maybe it's a policy person who needs to say whether or not this is something you're allowed to share or whatever. The accountability to data stewards isn't someone that would ever necessarily get something routed to them, but if you didn't have defined stewards, maybe they're the ones who could say who that should be. So, and the reason I point this out, there's a whole best practices session around the 4 types of data stewards. And a common mistake people make is they initially set up their data stewards and they say, oh, we've got the chief financial officer is the data steward over finance, and the director of HR is the data steward over HR. And that's great, but those are not the people that you would ever route a question about a definition to, or a data quality issue to, or I need a new report to, right? Those are the people who might be able to say, these, of my team, these are the people who are going to have those other stewards. But, so you got to be careful about the difference between your actual do the work data stewards and your, the buck stops here, I'm going to define who will do the work person. Then there's another role that I talked to in about several other sessions, that you and your organization may not have either well-defined stewards or stewards that are kind of trained or ready or bought into or available to just have something get routed directly to them. So one really high valuable thing that you can add in your organization is to either hire or identify a person or a team of people that will serve as a data steward support or triage role. So they'll take in any request whether you don't want to have that get directly routed to someone, or maybe for a while like you're not doing any routing and it just comes to that person or that team to take a first look at it. Maybe they could answer it, but more than likely they're going to go find that expert and bring them in as a collaborator to help answer that question, and then use that to train them towards being a steward. If the request is more related to I need access to this, or I need my permissions turned on, that may be going to a tool owner like your Tableau administrator or a DBA to give you access to a data system. The other kind of routing here is that it could be routed to a report writer or analyst or developer who they themselves may be a steward, or they may be interacting with the steward as they build out things to design that. Then you have your oversight team that is kind of supporting those people. They not necessarily getting anything routed to them. And then maybe there's someone who is actually doing some administration in the tool. But main thing here is we're going to talk about focusing on report requests. It's going to go to either report writer, but ultimately get involved the stewards and the people who are going to provide their expertise and guidance on this information.